Okay.
Okay, we was playing video games.
Oh well, that's hard to get.
Had a long day mathing today.
Yeah, well that's that makes it hard.
Some of these are new. They get three of the same color? Nope, they did not. They're kind of silly. Where's magenta? You had it. Yeah, you did. You had it in the end. No, I read it. It didn't say. Well, it's close enough to the government. It's more paint than anything. And clover. Yeah, we have magenta. Okay.
So good evening. I don't know who else. I don't know. If we'll get anybody else. We'll probably have some others that'll join in here. Just getting my paints out for me. Let's see who's here. Hi, Karen. And hi, Sarah. It's good to see you folks. And I'm guessing that Megan is there. I'm hoping. Is that Jennifer? I think Jennifer's here. Good, good, good. Okay. I can't always tell who's exactly here. I can kind of see some of them, but my eyes don't work that good anymore. And we're going to get started in just a minute. Ginger's here! Yay, Ginger! So we're waiting for a few more people to come along, and we'll get working. I'll show you what we're working on in just a second. I've got to go wash my hands.
I really hurt. It'll be good when it's medication time. I overdid. What else is new? Yeah, what's new? Somebody else came in.
Greetings, greetings.
Where the heck is the volume?
Okay, so we've got. Oh, I wash my glasses.
So many canvases.
And you might actually be able to hear it now. All the way. Now. You might be able to hear it now.
Alrighty. Let's see. Terrific. Terrific, terrific, terrific.
Bless you.
So let's back a little bit there. Okay, so good evening, everybody, and welcome. We may get some more folks as we go along, but that's okay. We'll catch them up and figure it all out. So I had a request for an ocean scene, but I thought we've done some ocean scenes before. What we haven't done is sort of an abstract nautical motif. So what we have here are bands, horizontal bands, with your choice of oceany kinds of symbols. You can, and I will show this over here too. So the bands can be any width you want. So you could have one band that was thinner than another. You have another band that's thicker. You could decide to have starfish going all the way across one band, or you want to have, have it varied all the way across. So I have some other possible things as we get to that point. I can help you out with this. Here's another set of, we've got a compass rose, seahorse, a couple different kinds of shells, a boat wheel, crab, fish. I had, let's see, a different octopus, a whale, coral, a couple kinds of starfish. Anyway, and then of course you could have something that's like that. And I realize that's backwards for you. I'm sorry about that. See, this is what I'm talking about. It's mirror image. But anyway, that would be another option. So here's some other, beach, different symbol, different sort of oceany kinds of symbols. But what we're going to start do it with is just painting horizontal lines. Now what you can kind of think of this as is like a set of shelves. All right, but because we're going to flatten this all, we're not going to try to make it look like it's in space. We're going to allow these to be more decorative. You don't have to worry about trying to make it look like it's a shelf or anything like that. It really is just bands of color that we'll then put in objects. And so what you want is just a big brush. There's a couple of sort of nautically kind of colors that you wind up seeing in when you see in these sorts of things. I mean, one of the first ones you'd think of is like a seafoam green. And so that would just be white and blue and yellow. And you want something that's kind of right in the, a good solid greeny kind of color, and then whiter. And you get kind of a beautiful pale green. I'm just going to do a band across there like that. And I'll tell you what, since I actually really like this color a lot, I'm going to mix a little bit more of it. It'll probably not be exactly the same, but that's even better.
She's going to come in and say hi.
Oh yeah, come on in and say hi. Where's the
Well,
puppy?
no, the dog.
Oh, the
no,
dog.
I thought she was going to come inside.
Oh, she didn't want to come in. Oh,
No,
here she comes. Here comes the puppy.
Come here, I'm over here.
Here comes the puppy. You gonna come say hi? You gonna come say hi to everybody? Here she comes.
She had to finish eating some of her dinner.
Oh, she needed to finish dinner.
Hi,
Okay.
guys. Here she is.
And you gotta show people on Facebook too.
Oh, hi, Facebook. Who's ever? Our little Grace. Yes, I know. Say hi. Hi, guys.
So what I've done is I've taken that same sort of seafoam green. I took a little bit more white and a little bit more blue, and so now I've got a sort of a bluer seafoam green, and I'm going to put a band down in here. I mean, this becomes sort of wherever you like it, wherever you want to have a band. And just for reference, we're going to put a narrow band, darker band up here, and we're going to put a narrow, darker band here, and we'll fill this in with a different color. That may be a peach. I think that's a peach.
And so, Bob, you have it in a vertical position?
I do, but you could certainly go horizontal with this. A horizontal composition gives more rest and peace. Has a oops, somebody's got me turned up in there. So the when you have a vertical composition, there's more tension in it. There's more tension in a vertical landscape, in a vertical orientation than there is in a horizontal one. Horizontal has a more settled feel to it. This is what when we paint a picture, the very first thing, the very first choice we make is what the piece is in terms of size and dimension and proportions. Those are actually very important things. If you think about it, the difference between a horizontal composition that is 3 times as wide as it is long is completely different than a square composition. They're very, very different. Just before you ever put anything on the canvas, they're different. And my professor used to say, that's your first choice. Those are the first 4 lines you choose, is the 4 lines that are the outside of your piece and what their orientation is. So before we've even done anything, we've made a choice. That's the thing about art. Every bit of it is a choice. And you can't, nobody else makes the choice for you. You make the choice. What's your choice? What's your color that you like? If I'm painting this color and you're thinking, yeah, I don't really, I'm not feeling that color. You paint the color that you're feeling. There's a lot of, but there are some really lovely colors that you get in sort of ocean themed decorative things, and it's a lot of the colors that you would see at the ocean. That beautiful pale green, pale bluish, the sea foam, which is aptly named, of course. I mean, it's sea foam. It's the one of the other colors that you'll get, and I'm going to get there a funny way. I'm going to take that greenish that I had, I mixed some magenta with it, and then I'm going to mix yellow in there with that, and that's actually going to get me pretty close. This is not for this particular mix was not for the faint of heart. Yeah, no. So I mean, I got right exactly where I was going. It could take you a long time to get there. I just painted sand color. And it really was. I went from this green to this sand color by just adding 2 colors, 2 little bits of color. it's not that hard once you figure out how they go together, but it does take some practice. So what I would say to get to a pale yellow, what you would do is once again start with a pile of white. You'd want to get a bunch of white um, aside and add a little bit of yellow to it. So let's see, I'm going to do this. I'm going to more white. So I have this sort of pale white that's already getting dirty because I didn't clean my brush real well, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm getting a kind of a dirty, whitish, yellow. That's actually a little lighter than what I had earlier, but that's a nice yellow there too.
And you said magenta also?
Yeah, what happens is that the complements negate each other. So if I make an orange out of the magenta and the yellow, and then add blue, I'm going to move towards a neutral. And the same goes with all three of those colors. That's what you get is when you start mixing them together, you start getting neutrals, and it's just a matter of the proportions. And that's the tricky part, because it's very easy to grab a ton of paint when you're mixing colors, and then what you have is a pile of paint that you really can't use now. It's a trick that's taken me a long time, and part of it is the reusing of the color by simply not even. I mean, I'm kind of working from color to color. I work from one color to the next color. I mix a little bit of color and use that.
Bob,
Yes?
can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Is it possible for people to mute unless they're talking? 'Cause
Oh,
there's
yeah.
so much background noise.
Okay.
I have a hard time hearing you.
Okay, yeah, that's. In fact, I can do that. I will take executive privilege, and I think I can mute you all. Let's see.
Yeah, I didn't know how to do it, Nate.
Okay, there we go. I think now you're all on mute. Okay. And you folks on Facebook are already on mute anyway. I'm very sorry about that. Yeah, they can't talk, so they're sort of stuck in there. So I will check back in a minute and check back for questions. But I'm going to make this band a little bit wider because I want there to be some difference between the bands. I don't want them to be quite the same. They are already a little bit different. So, as I say, here's this. It's one of the reasons I really like the magenta as my red, is because when I mix that in with the yellow, I do get an orange, but it's really a dirty orange. The magenta is a little off of spectrum red. It's a little over the line into purple. So this color is you get these exquisite mixes with it. And it's the same reason I use quinacridone in gold in my work, in my oils, because it has that same kind of a murky quality. It's not quite murky. It's not right on the spectrum, and it allows you to get some really beautiful colors. They're also transparent. The quinacridones are a transparent set of colors, so. Which makes them interesting in other ways. You can use them for glazes very nicely, and you can still see what's under when you glaze with them. There's not very many yellows that are transparent. That's one of the reasons I use the quinacridone, is that it's one of the few. Hansa is more of a semi-transparent, but that will work, and I keep Hansa around as well. Ansa yellow is a nice bright yellow. I use that for summer, more in the summer. You know, it's funny, the palette changes from summer to winter. The palette in the fall and the winter is actually much warmer. The palette itself is warmer. A lot of the light is cooler. I mean, a lot of the light is the light itself is warmer. The objects around are often cooler, like the snow and all. But yeah, I'm bringing this one down pretty far. All right. Now, I think the next, let me just check in here. Everybody doing okay in there? Oh, look like you're going right along. Good. I'm going to mix a peachy color. There's a lovely peachy, pale peach that is often used in sea, oceany kinds of motifs. Yeah, this is nice. This is good. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about this edge up here right now, because after we do these bands, we're going to draw a wide band, a dark band right across here. So it's going to cover this middle up anyway. So you don't have to worry about how these edges come together. We're going to cover right over it. If anybody needs me, you can always unmute yourselves and get any questions. This peach that I'm doing now is really just the yellow and the red, just a dirty version of them. And by dirty, I mean, you know, you take yellow and red and you have orange, but if you stick green in that, it's going to make the orange dirty. And not a lot of that. You don't want a ton because you want to still keep the cleanness of the color, but you want it a little off. You don't want it to be the vibrant kind of color that you get with pure, you know, purest color. The part of the idea for this, it was I had a few requests for ocean, and last week somebody had said ocean, and this week said. So anyway, I was thinking we've done that before. This is what's fun about this is that you can put in whatever you want when we get to the putting the stuff in. This really you can personalize completely. There would be a really fun way of doing this. I'm going to just paint in the little objects, but another way of doing this would be to find them online, find images that you like, put them into a program like Publisher or something, and then you print them out. and then cut them out as stencils. And once you've got your stencils, you can cut either the inside or the outside. You put down the stencil and you paint either around the outside edge to make a shadow, a halo, or you paint the inside to make the object. And so you could see it. I mean, you could make seashells or any of these objects as a stencil, and then stencil them into very, very precise edges and things like that, which are much harder to do as a painting. Let's see. I'll figure out what I want in that other band there. Let's see. I think I'm going to go with a nearly straight blue, light blue, very pale blue. Let's see. Way pale. So this would be good practice for Aaron. Aaron wanted to get light colors down. So the way I'm doing this as a really, really light blue, this one band. So I've got a lot of white, and I'm adding to that just the tiniest bit of blue, just to give just a hint of blue. So it's really, really, really pale. It might not even show up to you on the screen because it's not a huge difference. But it's a really nice color, and it will show up in the final piece. You'll it'll be a nice contrast from some of the other colors that are around. This is even lighter than those. See, this is not even quite high key. High key would be to make everything very, very light. So if we went even a few steps lighter on all of these colors, you would start to call it high key. High key would apply to paintings of snow scenes and things like that, where like everything is bright, where there's almost no dark colors at all. A bright fog is really good for that, for a high key, because there's like no deep shadows, and you can have some fairly bright light. Let's see, a little more this blue in there. Now, at this point, you could decide that you're just going to do variations on Mark Rothko. At this point, you could just do Mark Rothko painting. Mark Rothko was a abstract expressionist from the middle of the 20th century, and he painted blocks. His compositions were one box over another box, often with a border. And these blocks would look like they were floating, or if you got the right distance from them, and they were large. These things are 10, 12, 14 feet tall. And if you stand in front of them, the blocks will look like they're floating in space. It's one of the most stunning experiences. He was actually a very spiritual individual. He saw his work as a form of meditation and of spiritual devotion, and was really very, very cool guy. I mean, he just his work, it's stunning in its simplicity, and it's often a lot of people look at it and they think, well, there's nothing there. There's just two blocks, but if you get in front of them in a book, I have to admit I never really quite understood Rothko until I stood in front of one of them, and I was at the Hirshhorn Museum in Washington, and they had one in the big round room upstairs with the balcony, and they've had two of them there. And I stood in front of it, and I just had this experience where I realized what it was he was doing, and I went, "Wow, that is incredible." But you don't necessarily see it. It's a visceral thing. You have to actually be in front of it to experience it. Rembrandt is another one like that. Because this is a cool thing. So I've never read this anywhere, but I'm pretty sure this is what Rembrandt was doing. If you look at Rembrandt's paintings, his paintings have kind of a fuzziness to them. Almost everywhere in the painting is fuzzy. And usually except for one spot. It's often on the nose or someplace like that on the face of the person he's painting. Well, if you get the right distance away from his painting and you stare right at the focal point, it looks perfect. I believe that what he was painting was peripheral vision. I mean, which is that just amazes me. The idea that somebody would actually paint peripheral vision. So I'm now going to paint some dark bands. Clean my brush. That's where I always loved Bob Ross, and he just flicks the brush back and forth on his easel to clean it off. And first of all, he's using paint thinner. This wasn't acrylics, this was oils. And he's like whack, 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 whack. I always wanted to be able to do that. I can't do that in here. Even with the water, I can't do that. I'm on an oriental carpet. Let's see. I'm going to take blue and magenta and make a nice purple. And then I'm going to add some yellow. Now you could achieve this same thing if you've got a brown in there, or if you've got black, you could do like make like an orangey color and then add black to it. That will give you, you know, there's a lot of ways that you can make brown using black to sort of as your neutralizer. What I'm doing is I'm just neutralizing the color by adding its opposite. So if it's too purple, you add more yellow. If it's too yellow, you add more blue. If it's too green, you add more red, and so on. So you can go back and forth. I'm just looking to get a nice dark color. What I've got now is sort of it's a deep grayish purple blue. That's sort of what I've got right now. And I'm just going to do. Actually, I'm going to do one with here. Now this is where, if I was doing this as like a finished piece, I would get obsessive and I'd actually measure these lines and I'd figure out proportions between the spaces and how big I wanted to make them, and I would draw lines and I'd make sure that these were all level. I'm not sure as I'm painting these whether I'm doing what I do when I write on a blank piece of paper where I go higher or lower from one end to the other, but I think that's relatively straight, relatively. I'm going to vary my color for the next band by adding more magenta and more yellow. And now I've got something that's much more of almost like a burnt sienna almost. And I'm going to make this line here. And I think if you vary them, if you make each of them a little bit different, it gives the eye something to look at. You're giving the eye some something that makes it wonder what's going on. Because the eye will actually see more differences than we would think. The eye can see a lot of variation in color, in dark and light. I mean, you know, our ability to judge the world around us through our eyes is actually, I mean, that's part of our makeup as human beings. And I say that, you know, that we can see where, when you're walking towards somebody on a sidewalk or, you know, on a street someplace, when you're walking toward them, I forget how far it is, but it's like, it's incredibly far away that you know where they are looking. Not just in your direction, but what part of your body they are looking at even. You know, you can tell that from a long distance away. so that we are actually tuned to pick up incredible amounts of information with our eyes that often we kind of take for granted. We don't really think about it. All the information that we get through our eyes. Um, so by varying, this was one of the things that Bob Newman, my professor Bob Newman, was on about all the time, was variation. Um, the last time I saw him, it was the year before he died. He was already not doing well cognitively, but it was a retrospective of his work, and uh, as he's showing the work to people, he'd say, "And look at this, and every one of these colors is different. I know because I mixed them." It was pretty funny. He was a funny guy, and he would mix every color very specifically. That his was a particular kind of approach to color. Um, See, I like the throw it all on there and let it blend as you go approach. And so, although I say that, but when I'm working on a finished piece, I get very particular about the colors that I'm looking for. I'm working on. I've shown them, I think, a couple times for everybody, but they're paintings from the White Mountains in the fall, and I'm down to the trying to figure out the last bits of light, and I'm really having some stress with it, just getting them just the way I want them. All right, this one I'm going to make a narrower band just because I want to give some variety. I showed this idea to Jody earlier, and she said, "I want to hang that out on the porch when it gets done." So hopefully it comes out nice enough for her. We have a lot of we like ocean things, and if we were doing this as a finished piece, I would be focused a lot on these edges. Are they hard edges? Are they soft edges? Are they, disappearing edges? What kind of edges are they? As a finished piece, if I were to work on this for a longer time, I would spend a lot of time working on the relationship between the different edges all the way up and down the piece. Let's see, I'll put in one more band here. Okay, so how's that all looking for everybody?
Looking good.
All right, now we're going to lighten this one up here a little bit. This one, I think I'll put this here. I think I'll wind up spending all night just adjusting these bands back and forth, but that's not going to get the pieces in here. So, okay. Jody liked the idea of having it say beach in there somewhere, so I want to get that in first. Let's see. I'm going to put in, I think, a row of starfish in here. Now, what's really nice about sea creatures is that pretty much anything goes. If you want your starfish to be orange, you can have your starfish be orange. If you want your starfish to be green, they can be green. If you want your starfish to be purple, they can be purple. Because you know what? There are purple starfish and green starfish and orange starfish, and there's ones with 100 legs and there's ones with 5. So you can have them have as many legs. They can have thick legs, thin legs. I think what I'm gonna do actually is I'm gonna alter. I'm gonna do them in here. I'm gonna do. What I've done is I've made a star, just lines coming out of a single spot. Now I'm just thickening them to make a starfish. Then I'm going to have a different starfish. I'm going to alternate starfish. The starfish is a little browner, and it's got more thin legs. And the thing with this is you could vary them as much as you want. You know, that's one of the reasons I gravitated towards doing sea creatures a long time ago, is that the forms are infinite. You can really use almost any form, any shape, any texture. You can find it under the sea. The colors, you know, and there's some colors that are just, it looks like they're impossible. It looks like there's no way those could be real colors. another reason to do the ocean, I thought was and I think people really are longing for getting out and being able to do some fun things. And the ocean is, for many people, going to the ocean is um, it's their breath of fresh air. It's it's their getting away from it time. And it's sad this year. It's going to be hard for a lot of people to do that. Um, and now with camps closed this summer, um, actually, I don't know that I know whether this has happened. Sarah, has Silver Lake canceled for the summer? I know Horton has. Wanakee has not yet, which is the Methodist camp up in the lakes. Wanakee is still deciding. I think they're probably going to decide to close up, but that's not happened yet. So I've got starfish here, but really any nautical kind of things. And I'll show you these again. This is one group here. We've got a crab, a lobster, a life preserver, a couple different starfish, coral, whale, octopus. There were some shells. We'll do a shell next, probably. So you can put in whatever your favorite thing is. I think I'm gonna, up in the top here, I think I'm gonna do a seahorse up in the top here. Seahorse is fun. The seahorse is basically just a big S that then comes back around on itself again. I think I'm going to need a smaller brush for this. Sorry about that, you're sitting on my box here. Small brushes. Oh, come on. Finally found something that I can work with here. I got a smaller brush. A teeny one now. Okay, so for our seahorse, we need and a little bit of a beak.
I think you may have a buddy here.
We're going to take a And the seahorse has this big chest that sticks out in the front here before it comes back in and then circles around for the tail. And I'm going to give him some colorful spikies. There we go. We have a little seahorse up there. Let's see. I think we need a fish. So I'm just going to fill in my fish here. Just make a fish shape, basic fish shape. And fill that in. And you know, any color works. That's the, again, the other thing is that almost any color can be found in nature in the real fish. So, you know, you figure you could put it in there and say, well, it's, you know, it's just like nature. The dog is over here. Jody's trying to get to the dog. The dog is right now trying to get at some kind of one of my pads.
No, she's licking.
Oh, she's licking or something. She's always licking something. She's pretty funny. Everything goes in the mouth. It's like a toddler. Oh, she's so funny.
Let's go this way. Let's redirect this way. Go this way. This way.
I got my fish, and then I can say I want to make him brighter looking. Take some of our blue and white, and I'm going to give him a little fish. And let's see. Should do a shell up here on the top. There's a bunch of different shell designs. The Nautilus is a favorite simply because I mean, it's the Fibonacci curve, and that one is pretty easy to do if you just kind of. And then you start curling around here. So you got the basic outline of it, and then what you can do to make the shell really come out is do some lines. Like that. And then we can fill this in. Again, you know, the shells come in just about every color under the sun. So I have kind of a purpley gray here, purpley bluish color. She's laying down on the pads here. She's so funny. I'll tell you, a little dog will really keep you active. We've discovered that she's keeping us moving quite a bit.
Yes, you were very good, and then you walked over to then started to cheer the little corner. I know you were very good.
Yeah, she already knows to hide when she's gonna like chew something. She knows not to let us see it. It's hilarious. She went for her vet visit today, and she was very good, and she weighs 4 whole pounds now. She's so funny. Let's see. Scallop shells. Some scallop shells. Let's see, I'm going to come down here and do
I'm just gonna close this door.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. The scallop shell has this really nice scallop on the top, scallop edge, and then these individual bands that come down. I think one of the nice things I when I was thinking about this as a composition, I thought this is a great one because you can do anything you want with it. You could make the colors in the background anything you want. You could make these as wide or as narrow. You can vary every bit of this composition and do it over and over again and have a lot of fun with it by putting in different elements. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to put an octopus in now. This will be the octopus's garden down here. I'm not sure why, but I think my octopus is going to be a purpley color. And The octopus is fairly simple because it's really just a balloon. You fill in your balloon. There's a neck. And then from the neck, count out 8 legs. And if you're doing this in a, not trying to be realistic, the legs can have some flair. I mean, they can come and do curlicues. We got our octopus on there. Oops. Oh, right. I wanted to put an anchor in. So the anchor is actually ocean themes have been used for a long time as symbols within the church. The church has often been called an ark, the ark of the church, and many church designs are actually on that idea. There's many of the old New England churches that have these giant beams inside that look very much like shipbuilding. So anyway, the church was thought of as a ship, and the anchor was a symbol that was used from very early on in Christianity for a couple of reasons, and I'll show you when I start this. You'll see. Closer to black here. Okay. Because when you go to make an anchor, you start at the sort of the classic anchor is a vertical with a cross piece. So it's a symbol of the cross. You put a circle on the top, put a ball on each side there, maybe. And you have your anchor. So the anchor was thought to be an image of Christ who becomes the anchor for the church. And it has the symbol of the cross in it, which served to remind people of the cross. So there we go. We got an anchor, and one more. Let's see. You know what? I'm gonna do a second shell over here. We'll have a little symmetry on this one. And we do our scallops. Okay. I'm going to unmute folks here. So how are we doing there? Everybody having a good time there?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it making sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. And everybody having fun over here?
No, we can't now. We gotta
Let's see. Now I'm gonna. Don't swear, Aaron.
There's it. Calling it. I never do. Well, if I do any more, I'm gonna mess it up completely. So we're calling it good.
Now, this is an ideal piece. This is an ideal piece if you wanted a piece where you could continue to work on it over and over again and just continue to make changes. This is the kind of thing that you can make changes to. Like a landscape is hard to make changes to because when you change one thing, it often will just affect everything else, and it's hard to stitch them together. But because these are like separate pieces, you really could just paint over any section of this and redo it, and it's a fairly easy composition to play around with. I'm gonna do my.
Nice. Like it. You want me to get out of the way? Oh, I wanted to see yours, man. Daddy could have just got up. Yeah. Oh dear. Oops.
Oh dear.
Oh, good at landscapes. I love that. Well, I'm not good at landscapes. Nothing tonight, but it's okay. I just. It's just too bad a day.
Some days you eat the bear, some days the bear eats you.
What, Bob?
Some days you eat the bear, some days the bear eats you.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Nice job, Nate.
That it looked like you're looking for some peace today, Nate.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very peaceful. It's a very peaceful piece. Looks like that's what you're searching for.
He knows.
Well, one of the things that I have found as I've done this over the last couple of years is that I often can tell where somebody's at because of the way they're painting.
He's gonna feed you, baby, or something.
And actually, I can tell a lot where somebody is that day, but also what they're like, what their personality is like. No, and it's an interesting thing. Oh, let's see. Just lost everybody here.
Anyway.
There we go.
That's why I've
Back.
taken her out to remind her that no, you do not pee in the house.
Yeah, no, that you don't pee in the house.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we're on the other end of the spectrum. We have the elderly dog.
Yeah.
16. So if you're not right on it. 14. No, she's 16. That's it. Yeah, sis said that she was 14. No, I don't know. She's old. And that was not okay, little girl. Nate's gonna take you out. That's what you're supposed to do. You need to tell us when you have to go.
About peeing in the house. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey.
But the
Say
old
again. Yeah, she's an old dog.
We have 3 old dogs, and they're all on something called Proin, Proin.
Yeah.
For incontinence.
Oh, that's good to know. I mean, she's usually pretty good about letting us know, but every once in a while she just doesn't. That's what she wants to.
Yeah, it's probably that she's decided she has to at that moment.
Yeah. Like it? I do like it. It's very nice. You should save it. Oh, girl. Beach life. Very nice.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah, it kinda does, looks mad. Oh. Baby.
So you could see, you could continue on with this. You know, you could continue on making adjustments, adding small details, all of that. You could continue that for, well, you know, pretty much forever. And it's so funny to see it in backwards. You don't notice the backwards so much until you see something written on there.
No, now you do.
So let's see yours, Aaron. Nice.
See it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Crabs. Kind of crabby.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a funny place down in the Outer Banks where you can get crabs. Yeah. They kind of put it that way, sort of. Yeah. Yeah, their billboards are pretty funny. So any questions anywhere? Or?
No, thank you. I'm doing digital at the same time.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yeah, you got skills.
I got stuff.
You have technology. No, and I think, you know, with you could do some really interesting things with bringing in objects in this, and then you can make adjustments in the colors and everything really very precisely. So I think I am going to sign off here and let you continue your fun painting. And
did you see the weather report? Do you have any plants you need to cover?
no, I don't have anything that needs to be covered. They're talking about frost for tonight.
27. They're calling it for a freeze.
Wow.
I don't like it. I'm done with it.
That is a feat.
I have an incredible niece who's Canadian, and she's going to be on Facebook Live. Her name is Gabrielle Shaw at 8:00, and she is a phenomenal songwriter.
I'm going to sign off here for you folks. Thank you very much for coming. We'll see you next week.